to come and speak about the pipeline, as it were, of projects that have submitted their expressions to be considered, and talk a bit about the question that was asked earlier: what are going to be the criteria to be looked at, what are the next steps in this regard, and so forth. So I think that will start to answer some of the questions that were raised. But let me appreciate the questions, and then please help me welcome the colleagues to the podium by giving them a round of applause. And then I hand over to you, Pierre.
So, good morning, distinguished participants. All protocol observed. We thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and we thank you also for dedicating time to that. It's really a privilege for us to stand in with such a diverse audience, representing Namibia's institution, Namibian traditional communities, project developers, but also state-owned enterprise. So my name is Pierre-Adrien Baudelet. So I'm French, coming from Kenya, and we're part of the advisory team that supports the government of Namibia and the Namibian Green Hydrogen Program towards the application to the CIF IDP, so Climate Investment Fund's Industrial Decarbonization Program. Together with my colleague Frederic, that we will also intervene, we are working at Cross-Boundary, which is a mission-driven investment firm that unlocks capital in frontier and underserved market through advisory, which we are part of, or direct investment platforms. Let me start by saying something that our assignment, and we want to emphasize that point, it's a fully Namibian-led process. We are only here, we're not here to select projects or make decisions, but we are only here to support the Green Hydrogen Program and the Environmental Investment Fund in providing information, in identifying opportunities, and also in identifying the challenges that all the projects suffer. Projects being a broad word covering both the private sector but also the underlying infrastructure that is needed for such projects. And we're here to assess the challenges that those projects face. Namibia is in a very unique position given its natural resources, and the ambition of the program is to develop a green economy and a broader decarbonized industry over hydrogen and not only. But ambition is not realization, and in order to demonstrate to the CIF program that there is a space and there are opportunities for funding and concessional funding, there is a need to demonstrate that there is a pipeline of projects that can be the recipient of such funding, and this is why we're advising and we're assisting the Green Hydrogen Program in this pipeline exercise. This pipeline exercise, first of all, I want to assess what it is and what it is not. So what it is a tool to develop potential targets, but it's not a selection process. There is no one that gets eliminated because it's not, because we need a handful of projects. This is not how it works. How it works is it's a compliance system. There are criteria that are established by the CIF, and we're trying to assess whether the projects are good recipient for that or not so good and need reinforcement in some forms. So on the right part of the slide, you will see eligible sectors. Eligible sectors don't mean that you have to be either a concrete manufacturer or iron and steel manufacturer or some form of pulp and paper process. It means that those are the targets that they are ultimately supported by the Green Hydrogen Program, the CIF program. If you concur to something that is one of the most vexing challenge of those sectors, then you're eligible to it. There is an additionality component in the financing that you can always try to find, and if the additionality is sufficient, then your project becomes eligible. But Those are the main targets. Those are the hard-to-abate industries that are supported by the CIF program. Altogether, the expression of interest was very successful. There has been 148 projects that have supplied their submission. Out of it, we found that 78 projects were broadly aligned with the CIF eligibility criteria. And we're trying to group them in a meaningful way that can sort or out of which we can surface the challenges that they face in financing. So we've grouped them. This grouping is not anywhere driven by some form of equality of criteria or whatsoever. What we are after is trying to find the challenges that this concessional money has to unlock. So the groups are clean energy and industrial power anchors, where there is most of the pipeline value. Then there is enabling infrastructure, so grid and NAM powers, grid upgrade, are eligible to it in so that they concur to the previous sectors. So we have to look at specific projects. So industrial decarbonization and value addition, so mineral beneficiation can be part of it. Circular economy and low carbon manufacturing, I will give example of projects right afterwards. And the last group is bioeconomy and agriculture and climate innovation. So those groups are consistent in terms of what challenges they have in front of them. So that's a little bit of the diversity of the pipeline. The 78, so there is a mistake, sorry for that. The 78 projects that are globally eligible, out of this, 90% of them seek some form of blended finance or concessional finance. There are 20 projects that are part of the circular economy and low carbon manufacturing. And there is 16 projects that are clean energy and industrial power anchors. Those are the projects that are most widely known here in the space. But there are also other projects. So if you account for 16 projects in that space, we have identified 62 projects that are not in that space. So there is room for all kinds of projects. The diversity of the program is so that there are a few projects that have reached some form of pre-FID stage, so either a pilot being already operating, or they have all their development paths fulfilled. The rest of it are either early stage projects or maturing projects, and we'll come to that afterwards. And the type of financing that they're seeking is mostly blended finance and equity and concessional grants. That is representative of the nature and the stage of those projects, which are mostly early stage projects. The debt project component is always looked at the end of the project when the construction phase has to be financed. So those are examples and not selected project. As I was saying, this is not a selection project, a selection process. We engage with projects so that we understand their most vexing challenges. But so in that first bucket, you've got widely known projects and that we have talked this morning about. So Hydron, Eon, Hydro, Clean Energy, Hyphen, Zero Molecules, whose names must ring bells. Then there are other type of projects, and I think this is important to highlight the diversity of it. So there are projects that are concurring to the value chain of green hydrogen, such as this ion electrolyzer and balance of plant assembly. There are projects that are also looking at the downstream of green hydrogen, such as the HDF project. There are also projects targeting roads access, such as Cold Roads Namibia, and EV charging station. So this is a Hempera project. And without going to all the details of all the projects, I can tell you that in each and every bucket, we are very pleased to see very diversified projects that are targeting a nationwide imprint. So most of the anchor projects are located on the coast, but part of those projects are targeting the entire Namibian market. So we'll have a nationwide footprint. And so the other projects also cover very different in nature projects, so such as pulp and paper, recycling of chemical products, brick manufacturing, and also the blue economy that you must be thrilled to see. There are projects such as Kelp Blue, which is in the southern corridor, but who can be driving a great blue economy and support the agriculture of Namibia. Maybe I'll invite Frederick to talk about our mandate.
Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I think before I talk to the slide, I just want to say thank you for welcoming us. We've spent the last 5 days here in the Erongo region and had the opportunity to see the Daurus site. We've had the opportunity to see the Clenergy pilot site, and we've also had a very good conversation with Namport, and above all, I think we've enjoyed the warmness and hospitality, and Your Worship, thank you for hosting us here in the region. What is our mandate? We, at this stage, very much engaged in kind of dialogue with all relevant stakeholders, and for us as financial advisors, a very strong focus will be on really understanding the projects that are in the pipeline. So those sponsors that have been grouped as 78 projects should have received their non-disclosure agreement to sign, and following which they have received a pretty extensive information request form to complete to us. So those that are here and are project sponsors that have not completed the form, and those that are online that have not yet completed the project form, please let this serve as a friendly reminder to please share that information with us. It's very essential for us to do our work. And here, what are you asking for? It's really understanding how far advanced the project is developed. We understanding as when it will reach financial close, some of the technical specifications. But also, and I just want to emphasize that also we are asking around local content. We're asking around employment creation. And we really want to make sure that the projects don't just serve a financial audience, but ultimately we have a strong understanding of the broader impacts they can have for the country and how they can interplay. And we've seen that on the prior slide very nicely, how they can interplay as a circular economy between each other and of course lead to opportunities along the supply chain. And so that is the stage where we are at. We will not be speaking to all project sponsors. I think that's also important for you to know. We are looking to have conversations with a representative sample. It's for us understanding the common challenges and really designing solutions that address the different groups that we're finding within the pipeline. And I'll come to a few examples of that in a moment. So with that information, our role is to assess the bankability. We will do that more on a cluster basis, and not individually for every project. And I just want to mention what my colleague said. It's not our role. We're not selecting projects for funding. We are really validating that there is a rich and vibrant pipeline. We are ground truthing as to how far advanced it is, where the gaps that remain, and we are putting our minds together in terms of how they can be solved. And we know that some solutions will come from people in this room, some solutions will come from government and regulators, and many solutions will need to be brought by parties within the private sector to collaborate closely. So identifying gaps is going to be a key part of our work, and with that in mind, then design financial instruments from the toolkit that we have with the IFC, the World Bank, and the African Development Bank, and with the benefit of the concessional funding from CIFs that we talked about, to hopefully allow these instruments to be pitched at the right level, meaning that they'll bring most value to the projects from a cost of funding perspective and meet the various projects where they are today. And all that information will then feed into the investment plan that will be worked on together with the program representatives that you met here, which really kind of sets out the direction of travel, the baseline plan. Here I just want to emphasize that this is, again, it's not a stage gate for individual projects. We are not proposing that we are saying these projects will receive funding, because that decision will be taken later on, and it will be the structures, institutions, including the development banks that are participating in it, that will run their own process, but that will be very much informed by the work that we are doing. So all the information that we are asking the developers to collect is ultimately for the benefit to be on the kind of on the radar for the funding institutions, and that's really why we strongly believe it's very much in the benefit to share that information with us. So I think the challenge that we see is we have a few large anchor projects, but if they succeed, that is very important, and we should all support them in the journey, but that alone is not going to be enough. So it's very much about how do we create kind of a broad-based economy and really harness skills, jobs, and make, we heard your worship talk about preparedness. How do we reach preparedness for companies and for individuals through skills? And I appreciate the questions that were asked about how can inform us about what skills are needed and provide us with solutions to bursaries, because we have youth that is looking to, needs the direction, where should they position themselves to be eligible to be there when the opportunity is ready. So what we are proposing right now, and this is very much work in progress, and we're working with the program and with the banking development partners, the multinational development banks. So four clusters: direct project finance, common use infrastructure, an MSME lending fund, and also something that we've identified as a need, but where I think we're still workshopping if and how that can be incorporated, a project preparation facility. So I just want to go a little bit deeper in that, just to give you a little bit of color in terms of how we think about that. And overall, we believe we cannot, one size doesn't fit for all, so we do need to have different buckets to cater to the different opportunities that we are seeing in the pipeline. The first is direct project finance, and that will be predominantly to the larger green hydrogen and ammonia projects. This will be in the form of direct loans provided by the likes of IFC or AFDB, but it can also be in an indirect form, and we heard Nicole earlier talk about SDG Namibia 1 as being a 49% government-owned fund that it has provided significant development financing to some of the key projects, and we're looking for ways to ensure it is well capitalized. So this particular bucket is very much geared towards ensuring that those projects that are at quite an advanced stage, that are significant in size, creating that industrial base. And here, I think that's one thing we also have to keep in mind. Namibia, I think, has fantastic assets, but it is of course in a global race. So countries like Mauritania, like Oman, like Chile, also have attractive features and are well prepared and will be looking to provide a similar product to the global markets. So what we are trying to do is ensuring a lower cost of capital as one of the key factors for ensuring competitiveness of the product for the export projects. So that's the first bucket. The second bucket, common user infrastructure. I'm not going to go too deep into that because I know we're having a separate session to go deeper into what it is, but on a principle basis, this is really shared infrastructure that wouldn't make sense for a single project to fund it alone. Or if they did, it wouldn't make sense to have parallel pipelines or parallel ports that are used only by a single party. That's not cost effective, and of course that doesn't really allow opportunities for additional projects to benefit from the first movers. So much of what is being thought about, for example, when we're talking about the jetty here in Walvis Bay, is to ensure that other users can also access it and can become part of that shared infrastructure. And that's where we're having discussions with the state-owned entities as well as the private sector to identify a common understanding which are the most critical bottlenecks, and then how does government or its state-owned entities need to be financially capacitated in order to meet that need, and with that, what is going to be the revenue model for those entities and for that infrastructure to ensure that it is a good and solid investment, of course, of government funds. The next bucket, I think, is a very exciting one. That's an MSME lending fund. And here, I really feel there is, with some of these large projects coming to fruition, there's going to be very significant opportunities for local supply chains. And a number of you, we've already spoken today, those can be in providing training, can be provided in terms of providing certification, it can be a whole range of services needed, as well as, of course, providing certain capital goods, which, of course, then comes back to preparation, creating partnerships with international firms, and really understanding the requirements of industry, and when these requirements will be there, what capacities are needed, and how to position that. And the MSME fund is meant to really provide the financial resource to do that, because it might mean rapidly scaling up in order to meet these requirements, which requires funds to acquire machinery, it requires working capital in order to complete larger order sizes. So this is a vehicle that we really see as working with companies in the supply chain, and where we are hoping that there's going to be a very intense dialogue between those companies that are close to reaching a financial investment decision or construction stage in operations, to really prepare the market to say what it is that we need, and work collaboratively to ensure that many of the services and capital goods can be provided by locals. And the last aspect is a project preparation facility. There are very interesting models, for example, in Kenya, where there's sort of climate innovation centers have been put up, and that are typically donor funded, and they provide various stages of entrepreneurship support that can be in the form of mentorship, office space, shared learning, as well as to degree grants and technical support to kind of complete studies and further advance the projects. And this, as I mentioned, is something which is still in discussions to see whether it meets the requirements and the nature of the funding provided here. So I think that's where I want to leave it for now, and I'm just going to hand back to my colleague Pierre. But big message here, it's not going to be a single solution. We're really looking to have a broad set of solutions, and excited to continue engaging with you, and I'm grateful for the questions that were asked here earlier in the audience. I think the more engaged all of you are, the better we can help shape the right solutions. Thank you.
Yes, I will take the opportunity to answer the question about MSME fund and eligibility criteria. So altogether, the CIF is designing this intervention under the following criteria. It has to target industrial decarbonization. That's first and foremost. Obviously, the program is designed to finance projects, but it's not designed to finance projects all on its own. There is a private sector set-aside component whereby the project is not here to crowd out private sector, but to crowd in investors that wouldn't have invested in the first place if those risks were not endorsed by the CIF program. The second thing is we have to demonstrate, there is a need to demonstrate that there is additionality in the investment So additionality is basically the impact, the additional impact that is financed through the intervention of the MDB or the CIF. What's important to think, it's the other way around. Say, what would have happened if that concessional capital didn't come in? What is the impact that it is financing? So there is a demonstration of additionality that is necessary, and there is also a demonstration of value for money, so to say, so that this is the right amount of concessionality that is employed. So to say, CIF money will never finance on its own a project entirely. It will just come in a financing structure to finance a specific element of the project. Then there is private capital mobilization, which is basically a consequence of what has been said earlier on. There is also a readiness factor involved. So the CIF money can finance pilot projects, the CIF money can finance a lot of things, but the project has to demonstrate that it is investment ready, and normally the private actors are here to assess that also. And there is basically down the line also an environmental and social compliance. So each project has to demonstrate a pathway to IFC performance standards or World Bank standard for the SOEs and the common user infrastructure. But that includes also monitoring and making sure that there is gender equality inside of it, and that it also respects all forms of community safeguards and also biodiversity. So since the MSME fund here, I don't know if we can see the pointer, but on the right side of it, is going to be channeled by a local institution that can be Development Bank of Namibia or EIF. It's not settled yet, but it's in discussion. Those institutions will be transferred the obligation to monitor and evaluate the performance of those projects according to the standards, but also to comply with those criteria. So I hope that answers the question about what are the criteria for the MSME fund. And so altogether, I think pretty much what Frederick has been saying, we need the engagement with project holders and project stakeholders to understand where the constraints are. And our work is going to be as much valuable as you participate to it, you fill us with the relevant input to it. And well, altogether, we look forward to that constructive discussion, and we look forward to working together with you to transform those ambitions in concrete projects.